Hi, Dr. Chelsea Wakefield. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome.
So please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm currently the director of the Couples Center at UAMS. And at the Couples Center, what we do is I see probably about 15 hours of couples work a week, which is couples in crisis and also people wishing to enrich their relationships. I also do community education. I do podcasts like this one, and we have a series coming up called the Relationship Enrichment Series, which is open to the public, which will be a wonderful 4-week series on Tuesday evenings from 7 to 9.
Very nice.
The 18th of September, yes.
Excellent. And where will that be?
That'll be in the lobby here at UAMS. And if you want to find out more about it, you can actually dial up Eventbrite. They have there's a little link on Eventbrite about, it's called the Relationship Enrichment Series.
Okay.
And this is the second time we've run this series. It was very well received the first time around last Valentine's Day. So we're doing it again in sort of a falling in love again series.
Nice. Very good play on words. And you're a very accomplished woman, especially in your field. And sometimes the journey seems crooked, but it's really always straight to get us where we want to go or need to go or can help others the most. And so tell us a little bit about how you came into this place of where you are.
Well, I'm getting older, and I just had my 60th birthday, actually. And looking back over my life, I really do see that everything that's ever happened to me has been an invitation into some sort of a redirection or a learning, even the most painful experiences. And I've come over time to trust the unfolding of my life, even when it's kind of random and unexpected.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, it is.
It is. It's truly wonderful. And you've written and published several books. And what are those?
My first book was called Negotiating the Inner Peace Treaty, and it talks about our inner cast of characters and how those inner characters can get into trouble with each other and into conflict or actually organizing committees. And it's got a number of explorations that you can name your characters and look at how they came to be and what their scripts and needs are. Work out their conflicts. My second book is In Search of Aphrodite, which is a book that I wrote about women's sexuality, hoping to shift the paradigm of how women think about themselves as sexual beings.
Right.
And it has something in it called the Sexual Essence Wheel, which looks at 4 dimensions of female sexuality, which are the romantic, the nurturer, the mystic or the muse, and the seductress. And looking at women can look at it and identify themselves and look at how the presence or absence of some of those energetics can help them really be anchored in their essential sexual essence.
Interesting. I mean, very interesting. So, when I was told about you, I was told, Claire, did you know that we have a sex therapist right here in Little Rock? And I had no idea. And I said, of course, my reframe on that was, wait a minute. You mean to tell me we have a Mrs. Fokker right here in Little Rock?
Well, I don't know that she would be my ideal role model, but yes, 10 years ago when I began to certify and train to become a sex therapist, some of my family and friends were rather appalled because they felt that this was not a dignified thing to do. But I've found the work incredibly rewarding. We live in a society that is both over-sexualized and very puritanical. And very few people are actually really comfortable with their sexual expression and their sexual experience. We've got a lot of script material that is very problematic for people in terms of what sex is. I like the quote that Esther Perel says. She says, sex is not something you do, it's a place you go. And I like that thought. It's a place you go. And it's a place that you can go together with someone that you care about or by yourself if you're a single person. But it's a whole realm. It's a country you can visit, and it's a way of communicating, and it's a way of expressing yourself, both emotionally, intellectually, creatively.
That's a wonderful reframe. I really like that. I enjoy that a lot. And so what are some of the largest misconceptions about your profession or a couple attending a sex therapist, or even an individual, that sometimes is the hardest breakthrough, or that you would like to break down for others who may be hearing this?
Well, the first thing that you have to clarify with people is that sex therapy is a clothing on talk therapy that does not involve touch. So
there's not a basket in the room.
No. And one of the concerns that people had when I first went down this pathway was they said to me things like, well, don't you know that sex therapy is code for prostitute? And because that's one of the misconceptions. I think that I didn't even know there was such a thing as a sex therapist 10 years ago, but through a series of serendipities, and through some of my husband's own health challenges, I came to understand that this was a really important practice.
Yeah.
So when people come in, they're often feeling very awkward and very embarrassed. And I just like to set people at ease and to meet them where they are in terms of their level of comfort.
Yes.
And then to invite them to begin to look and explore and think about their sexuality in a new way. Some of what I do is educational, because I find that very few people actually really understand how their sexual anatomy works, particularly women. So I enjoy educating women about sexual arousal and taking them away from the Masters and Johnson's model, which is a very stair-stepped model that is kind of linear. And introducing Rosemary Basson's model, which has more to do with the circular model, and it seems to suit women more in terms of their entry into sexuality and how they actually really experience it. I also had a wonderful mentor early on by the name of Gina Ogden, and she has a 4-dimensional wheel that sometimes I get people up under their feet walking around, which explores the dimensions of heart, mind, body, and spirit, and their experience of their sexuality, their formation of their scripts, and to move them away from a performance paradigm into a pleasure paradigm and a communication paradigm.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. And I love the fact that we get to know that you're clothed and there's not a basket in the room.
Right.
That's such a reassuring factor to know that we all get to keep our clothes on with you, Dr. Wakefield.
That's right.
And so, many of us, I think you're so correct, and that we find this such a taboo topic, yet we all know that we all got here some way. We all know that our parents have had sex at least once. And if we have children, we've all had sex at least that many times, or somebody did. And so we shouldn't create these stories in our heads that we then frame ourselves to have a negative connotation around. It's just, it's what we internalize, and we create the fear around it, and then project it onward. And then we carry that instead of breaking that down and saying, you know what, this is just another issue or another thing or whatever, and then how to progress. And so I think we also do that with our children. It's like when I needed to discuss sex with my parents, I'll never forget, I asked one parent, and then that parent said, I don't know, go ask the other. So how do you suggest in today's society, where so much exposure to everything is at a child's fingertips, when and how does one discuss sex with a child?
Well, I think it's important that we begin to frame the body and the body's functions with children very early on. It's helpful if we call things their proper names so that children become comfortable with actual anatomical names like vagina and penis, and to begin to talk to them about what their bodies do. I'm thinking of a story that would actually deeply embarrass my son if he ever watched this podcast. But when he was a little kid, he was standing in his room and his penis was standing erect, and he was saying, "It won't go down, it won't go down." And I said to him, "Well, keep touching it and it will go down eventually."
So says every man.
I think he was about 6 years old at the time. But the point is that if we start to talk to children in a relaxed fashion about their bodies, and to actually really begin to, particularly in the modern world, we have to intervene with the inevitability that children are going to be either viewing pornography or they're going to be exposed to others who have viewed pornography. And unfortunately, pornography is one of the major routes of sex education that our children have nowadays, which is very unfortunate because the scripts that are portrayed in pornography are not actually what human beings do. They are adult entertainment, and they're actors, and they don't represent true human sexuality. Right. They represent the realm of fantasy and any number of assorted other things. Right. So we need to talk to our children about how, as if they will view pornography, and talk to them about it. For instance, one of the things that I encourage people to say is that if they view these things, they can certainly feel free to come and talk to us about it. But what they need to understand is this is actually not what real human sexuality looks like, by and large.
So what I'm hearing is we must lay out the expectations in a very clear format based on the age of the child, so that they can then make the appropriate choices. Otherwise, society will do that for them, and then they won't be able to make appropriate choices that are condoned by society.
Yes, and it's not just choices, it's actually the templating of sexuality that happens with kids. And so it's incredibly important that we counter the messages that are being portrayed by pornography about what men do, what women want, what men like to do, and what part of the script in most of pornography has to do with it's a male-dominated script. And young women nowadays often are engaging in behaviors that they have learned from viewing pornography, or that their young men have learned from viewing pornography, which are not something that they would necessarily want to engage in, but it actually feeds into a much larger issue, which has to do with the honoring and valuing of both our human mentality and who we are as sexual being. The expression of that is actually a gift, and it needs to be very carefully selected in terms of who we're going to share it with and how we're going to share it, and the relational factor that is involved in that. And we have to have these conversations with our kids.
Yeah. Again, it's we must take away the fear and our own insecurities in order to step into those conversations authentically with our children, because the outcome can be devastating if we don't.
Yes.
And so back to adult relationships. What are the things that you see as makers of a relationship? And then also, what do you see as breakers of a relationship?
Well, when people come in and work with me, I'm always interested in what kind of a story they are in and who they are in that story. And a lot of couples therapists will approach couples therapy as almost a conflict resolution or a communication training. And while that is certainly a component of working with couples, actually having them learn to attune and to understand what's going on the inside of their partner is the foundation for that. So that, people have different attachment patterns. It's something that I talk a lot about with my couples. Some people are very comfortable with closeness. Some people are not comfortable with closeness. And there's a certain amount of co-regulation that has to go on with the partners. It's two nervous systems, actually. We have our minds, but we also have our bodies, and we have our brains that are feeding into our bodies all kinds of signals. So until we actually learn to physiologically co-regulate with a partner, we can't really get much done, either with regulation in the living room or in the bedroom.
Right.
That's something that has to be taught to people, to really learn their partner and to learn how to be cooperative.
Right. So there are no real, you have a visitor.
I do. She's checking to see if I'm on the line with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you see, when patients come to you, what are the things that you see the most in failed relationships?
People get married or into a committed relationship without really knowing each other. And there's actually what I call a relationship roadmap. And the way that roadmap works, this is in my third book that I'm writing right now, is the enchantment is the first phase. Then comes the disenchantment. Mm-hmm. Then comes either the struggle and anguish or the inner work. And then the fifth stage of that would be the promised land of conscious relationship. So there's something that happens at the beginning of a relationship where there's an enormous dopamine download of the feel-good chemical in our brains, and we're kind of drunk on love. And a lot of people will get into a committed relationship or even marry when they're in that phase. And then what happens as soon as we become committed or in a relationship where the other person really becomes important to us, not just emotionally, but in terms of paying the bills and working out the dailiness of life, is we get into misattunements. And those are to be expected in relationships. So people have to learn how to work with their differences without getting into a power struggle. Yeah. So one of and they also don't really know each other very well. They don't really know how the partner is casting them, what roles they're in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens with couples is that they'll begin as role mates. So they might enter into a relationship, have children, they're paying a mortgage together, they're building their careers together, they're having friends together. And then at the empty nest, that story has expired. It no longer has meaning, and so they need a new story. So there's a lot of couples that are in trouble in midlife because the story that they entered into in the original part of their relationship no longer works for them. Yeah. Of course, there's trust issues, and there's learning how the differences in personality can actually be a benefit rather than a deficit. But trust and meaning is very important in relationships. And how are we actually sharing the insides of who we are with another person? Do we feel safe to do that? Yeah. Are we co-creating meaning together?
Right. Are you taking off all of your masks and being vulnerable?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I guess, so the flip side of that would be, what breaks a relationship would be not doing any of that.
The loss of meaning, breaches of trust, which can be any number of things. Breaches of trust, I call them rogue actions. These are things that people do without really consulting their partner, and they include things like taking a job in another city, making a big purchase, getting pregnant, having an affair, inviting your mother to live with you without checking with your partner. All sorts of things that can be breaches of a sense of the fact that you're taking me into account. Affairs are something that happen quite a bit nowadays. They're very easy to have, and they're also very easy to discover.
Yeah.
With our social media. So both of those are true. And so I do a certain amount of repair with couples who've had breaches of fidelity, helping them to recover from that and to look at what led up to that, and also to look at what their fidelity agreement is going forward. It's very complicated in the age of Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that has created a lot of job security for you.
Yes, actually it has. And it's a whole new topic amongst relationship and couples therapists, because it didn't deal with this 10 years ago.
Right. I mean, you're just creating new divisions and new books and all kinds of stuff now. You're like thanking Facebook and social media like every day. It's a huge form of gratitude.
I must say that one of the things I'm really appreciating about being in this line of work is working with younger couples before they're in big trouble.
Well, and I would also think that the new perspective would be therapy prior to marriage. And knowing this commitment you speak of, not just a marriage commitment, but then the commitment to the partnership in all these areas, and then self-discovering that as a couple, as a partnership, prior to entering that.
All of those are very important, and we have to realize that as people grow over time, they evolve. So you're not going to be the same person that you were 10, 20, 30, 50 years from the time that you married. And there are actually some skills and some anchoring in the process that allow people to continue to grow, which is, by the way, what keeps a relationship vital.
Right. I'm so grateful I'm not the same. I mean,
yes, absolutely. Myself as well.
Right. So what is one thing you definitely want to make sure that women hear through your words today and through your work that you do?
I think that really taking some time to self-reflect on who you are and what you want to create in your life is very important. We need to have a life of our own and a meaning that's not grounded in being in a relationship. And then we need to bring that into the relationship and then build, there's the you, the me, and the we. And that we is very important to establish, but there has to be a me and a you before we can even begin to talk about the we. So we need to stay grounded in what is meaningful, what brings us life. And that takes some time and some inner work. You have to move beyond the archetype of the pleasing partner and the orientation, tell me who you want me to be so I can be with you, and I'll be that, because that is a recipe for all sorts of problems.
That's a no, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Wakefield. You are so enlightening and so many new perspectives, and I'm so glad to be able to keep my clothes on for the discussion.
Well, thank you.
So you have a fantastic week.
Okay. And please encourage people to check out the Relationship Enrichment Series at UAMS.
Yes.
Starting in September on the 18th.
Absolutely. Will do.
Thank you.
Look forward to your new book as well.
All right. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.